CatSynth TV.
Hey everybody, it's your guest reviewer JB here for CatSynth TV. Today we are taking a look at The Major, a book by Moebius. Before we get started on that, I want to ask you to please subscribe to this channel for more cultural content coming out regularly. Please consider underwriting the efforts. There are links to Patreon, Ko-Fi, merch, etc. down here below. You see it right there. And if you like what you see here, please do share this video out. Give it a thumbs up. Help the algorithm out a little bit. Help us get a little bit more mileage out of this video. All right, let's dive right into this. The Major by Moebius. Moebius, what can I say? Just for a little bit of background, Moebius was the pen name of Jean Giraud. Jean Giraud, Moebius was one of the most incredible illustrators, artists of the late 20th century into the 21st century. One of my favorites, probably most widely known for his work that was published in the United States in Heavy Metal magazine, etc., etc. And you know, bits and pieces of his artwork has filtered out through the designs, which were kind of taken into consideration by Ridley Scott for Blade Runner and Aliens and so forth, and really influenced a lot of the work of Star Wars, etc., etc. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. Today we're talking about this new English language edition of The Major, which was published just recently by Dark Horse. Now, The Major is Major Grubert, or Grubert, Major Grubert, if you prefer the French pronunciation, one of Moebius's characters, one of the major characters that Moebius used from, the late 60s, early 70s, all the way up to his death in the 2010s. One of the most enduring and kind of characters of the Moebius pantheon, let's say it this way. Now, this book here is a bit of, it seems like this was something that was started as just kind of a private a journal kind of thing that Moebius was working on, and kind of developed into a book at some point. I would compare it to, for anyone out there, if you've read the Inside Moebius books that came out in an English language edition just a few years ago, where they were kind of private journals and sketchbooks that were kind of developed into a series. It's a little bit along those lines. It's kind of more on the philosophical bent. It's not like some of his more well-known series like the Airtight Garage or the Adina Saga, etc., that follows a very kind of, there's a certain pacing and there's a story that develops. This is very different from that kind of thing. This is more kind of philosophical musings, and it's a very different kind of book. It's interesting because I did read this book a few years ago in a Spanish language edition. We'll see that cover right here. Piece through it a little bit. I did pick up the Spanish language edition, so I was familiar with this book before this English translation came out, and I was pleasantly, let's say, surprised to say that I understood it just as much in English as I understood it in Spanish. You know what I mean? I thought maybe I wasn't quite getting it or something, but yeah, reading it in English and this translation is like, okay, this is a different kind of thing going on here. So maybe it isn't, the most the clearest thing to get through. It's really fantastic stuff. Let's take a look at some of these illustrations here. You can see most of it is done in this very kind of loose style, as I would characterize it. Moebius was known for, at times, those very detailed panels there would be a lot of very small details and everything was kind of worked out. You can see here, especially on these pages that we're looking at here, very loose, almost kind of sketchbook-like kind of things. And you can see actually that it was done over a period of years. If we look down, one of Moebius's things was he would sign every single page. If you look down, usually on the bottom right, you'll see his signature and the year that page was done. You can see here, this page says 2001 when this was done, and on the very next page, it's 2006, and then it kind of goes back and forth. So, and you can see also the drawing style does change a little bit from page to page at times. Really fascinating thing. So again, this is a different kind of thing. This is a very kind of philosophical musing. As I said, Major Grubert is the primary character in it. Of course, he's the title character. You may remember we did a review of La Chasseur des Primes a few years ago. We did a review of that one, another book that had Major Grubert as the main character. If you didn't check that one out, there's a link right up there above. You can go back and check that one out. But this one's, again, different from that book because this is very kind of, it has the interactions between Grubert, or Grubert, if you like, and these other two characters that appear at different times. One is named Senator, and the other is named Watson. But very much in the kind of, I don't know what you would compare them to. The thing that came to mind for me was Didi and Gogo, if you remember those two characters from Waiting for Godot. Or if you remember Tom Stoppard's play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, etc. There's those two characters, adapted from the Shakespearean play, of course, coming through. There's these kind of absurdist duo kind of posing these questions and kind of interacting with the Major at different points. Really fascinating book. I mean, it just kind of wanders around and it takes its time. I mean, it kind of goes into these kind of philosophical bents. You'll see Moebius makes an appearance himself in there. Very distinctive eyeglasses that he wore. You see him in some of these drawings as a secondary character, kind of interacting much in the same way that he did in those volumes of Inside Moebius. So, as I said, I did read this in Spanish, and there's some very interesting differences, let's put it that way, between this English language edition and the Spanish or the kind of standard European edition. And let's take a look at that here. You see that this is a larger book here, our English language version, and it's printed on this kind of semi-gloss white paper, and we have just kind of standard pagination. We have one page on the left and another page on the right, etc., going like this. If we look at the European edition, you can see it here. It's a smaller book. That's one thing. Next thing is it's on this yellowish kind of paper, this kind of off-white yellow, and you'll see the interesting pagination where it's printed on one side and then the reverse is blank, and it goes that way all through it. So the European edition has twice as many pages, right, as the American edition, but that's because half of it is blank, which is really kind of a fascinating thing. And you wonder, it talks about that a little bit in some of the supplementary information that we have here. And my thought is maybe that's just because it kind of duplicates the way the original was done, right? I mean, if it was done originally as a notebook, he would only illustrate on one page of it so that the ink would not bleed through to the second page. That's just a thought. One of the really fascinating things about this. One of the other really cool things about this English language edition that you didn't have the benefit of, let's say in the Spanish language edition, if we look, there's kind of a foreword here, but in the back we've got these additional color plates right here. Beautiful, beautiful color plates and these additional illustrations in the back, these full-page illustrations. And we look back here and we see that there's actually this sort of index at the back that's kind of page by page, footnotes, as you would say, because a lot of the text that goes through it, a lot of the dialogue is making reference to different people throughout Moebius's life and career, or kind of going off on different tangents, which may or may not be entirely clear to the reader. There was a similar thing, again, going back to the Inside Moebius editions that we talked about previously, where there was this kind of footnoting to it. So this really, really helps explain what some of these references are that are a little bit more opaque, let's put it that way, to the average reader. Now, speaking of the average reader, is this book going to appeal to the average reader? Well, this is definitely not a place to start. If you're looking to get into Moebius's work, into his oeuvre, so to speak. This is a pretty dense work. It's very personal. There's some fantastic art, of course. I mean, one can never quibble with the quality of the artwork on it, especially on pages like this. My goodness, would you just look at that? Whoo-wee! But at the same time, if this is the first Moebius book that you're getting into, maybe you should, really try to start with the Airtight Garage or one of the kind of, traditional works that you start with, or Arzac, and get into it through that way. So, yeah, fantastic book. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I got a kick out of reading it in 2 languages and kind of comparing the experience from one to the other. But this is beautifully done. It's beautifully, handled the way that they, really took care with giving all of the supplemental information and the additional color plates especially, so thumbs up really to Dark Horse for the job that they did on this. Just really fantastic. How many stars do I give it? I give it, 5 shooting stars. Going back and forth. I mean, it's just absolutely some of the most wonderful stuff ever. And, like I said, I'm a super fan. So, I mean, how could I give it anything less? Please do check it out.
To find out more about this new edition of Moebius the Major, please visit the Dark Horse Comics website and check out the description below this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.
Hey, you're watching CatSynth TV!